When I got married, I didn't mention that I'd inherited 3 apartments from my grandmother, and thank God I didn't. Because just 10 days after the wedding, my brand new mother-in-law showed up at our door with a notary and a prenup I was never meant to see. She had no idea I already had more real estate under my name than her son probably ever would, and I plan to keep it that way. Before we get into it, leave a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how these stories connect people from everywhere. Go ahead, make yourself a cup of coffee and get comfy. This one's worth hearing. My name is Jenna Caldwell. I'm 36, a public school reading specialist in Greenville, South Carolina. 10 days ago, I walked down the aisle in a borrowed lace dress, said, "I do" to the man I love, and thought I was stepping into the start of something beautiful. Turns out, I was stepping into a storm. I didn't expect the knock at the door to come so soon, or with such quiet calculation behind it. It was late morning on a Tuesday. I was still in pajama bottoms and one of Ryan's oversized college sweatshirts, standing barefoot in the kitchen with a chipped coffee mug and day 3 hair. Married life, I thought, as I sipped my coffee. Cozy, soft, slow. Then the doorbell rang. I padded across the floor, expecting a neighbor or maybe a package. Instead, there stood Loretta Caldwell, my brand new mother-in-law, perfectly pressed in a beige blazer, lips painted a severe coral, and beside her was a woman I didn't recognize, slightly younger, dark slacks, leather folio in hand. A notary. "Oh, Jenna," Loretta cooed. "Hope we're not interrupting anything." She didn't wait for an answer before walking in. The notary followed, smiling politely. I stood there, confused, one hand on the door. Is Ryan expecting you?" Loretta turned, already halfway to the living room. No. "This is just a quick little thing. Family housekeeping. Won't take more than 15 minutes. She pulled a manila envelope from her handbag and placed it on the coffee table like it was a tray of cookies. I didn't move. The notary spoke up, gentle but firm. "Hi, I'm just here to witness a signature today. Nothing invasive." Loretta smiled like she was on a talk show. "It's just a standard family wealth clarity agreement. Ryan already signed the first version years ago. This is just a renewal, now that you two are married. You know how finances can cause confusion down the road." I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "I'm sorry," I said, carefully. "Oh, what agreement?" Loretta gave a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "It just outlines that anything either of you acquired before marriage remains yours, and anything after is joint. That way, no misunderstandings, especially if, God forbid, something happened to Ryan." I froze. Because in that moment, I realized this wasn't about clarity, it was about control. And I wasn't just Jenna, the woman who married her son. I was now a potential threat to the family estate. I walked to the table slowly. "Can I read it?" "Of course," she said quickly. Too quickly. "But truly, it's all boilerplate. You're a teacher, not a lawyer. Let's not waste your time." I opened the envelope anyway. There it was, in neat legalese text. "Failure to disclose any pre-existing assets within 30 days of the marriage shall constitute joint ownership unless otherwise agreed upon in writing." 30 days. I had 20 left. And if I signed this now, they would own half of everything, even what they didn't know existed yet. I swallowed hard, because what Loretta didn't know, what no one knew, was that my late grandmother, Ella, had left me 3 fully paid condos in Asheville, properties in my name, deeded and passed down in private. Not even Ryan knew. My grandmother had whispered to me the day she died, "Keep them quiet until you know who you're really married to." And now I understood exactly what she meant. "Jenna?" Loretta's voice cut through my thoughts. "Everything all right?" I looked up at her and gave the smallest smile I could manage. "I think I need time." She blinked. "Time?" "Yeah. I'd like Ryan to read this with me. I'm sure you understand." Loretta's lips pressed into a thin, pink line. Well, I was hoping to get it done while the notary's here. She charges by the hour. I shrugged. Then I guess I'll owe her an apology. The notary looked away politely, pretending to read her own notes. Loretta's voice dropped just slightly, her tone sugar-slicked and dangerous. This really would have gone smoother if you'd been honest from the beginning. And there it was. A tell. She suspected something. Maybe she'd overheard a conversation. Maybe someone had mentioned Asheville. Maybe she just had a sixth sense for money. But in that instant, I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a trap, one I had just barely stepped around. I picked up the envelope and handed it back. I'm not signing anything today. Loretta's smile vanished like a light switch. The notary quietly gathered her things. No one said another word. As I walked them to the door, Loretta turned back to me with a smile that chilled my bones. Well, I hope you're as protective of your marriage as you are of your secrets, Jenna. Because marriages built on lies, they don't tend to last. I shut the door without replying. And right then, I realized, she came prepared to trap me. If you've ever had that moment when your heartbeat moves to your throat and your mouth goes dry, then you know exactly how I felt standing there, skimming that document in my own living room. The title on top said Family Wealth Clarity Agreement, but what I saw line by line was something else entirely. It was a loaded contract, sneaky and deceptively polite. Dressed in neutral language like transparent protection and shared future equity, but underneath, it was a legal landmine. And right in the middle of page 3, my stomach dropped. Failure to disclose premarital assets within 30 calendar days of legal marriage shall result in all current assets being considered marital property, jointly owned at time of discovery. I blinked at the wording, reread it, and then again, slower. In other words, if I had anything before marrying Ryan, and I didn't declare it now, they could claim ownership over it later. That's when I saw the trap for what it really was. Loretta wasn't protecting her son. She was positioning herself. If I signed this, she could walk into a courtroom one day and say, "Your Honor, she failed to disclose 3 condos. 3 separate deeds, rental income in my name. If I signed this piece of paper, all of it could become fair game. And I had less than 3 weeks left before that 30-day post-wedding clock ran out. I glanced up from the document, aware of Loretta watching me from across the room. Her smile hadn't budged, but I noticed the tiniest twitch in her jaw when our eyes met. She knew exactly what this clause meant. She was counting on me either being too naive to understand or too polite to question it. The notary cleared her throat softly. We can go ahead and initial on the first page, and I'll walk you through the signature line. Loretta chimed in. It's just a formality, sweetheart. Ryan already signed his years ago. This just updates things now that you're part of the family. I folded the document slowly, buying time. Well, I don't have anything to disclose, I said carefully. Loretta's eyes narrowed a fraction. Nothing at all? I smiled. No assets? Just a classroom full of 5th graders and a retirement fund worth about $70. The notary laughed gently. Loretta didn't. She stared at me, like a hawk that couldn't tell if its prey had slipped away or was just playing dead. I handed the envelope back. I think I'd like Ryan to look at this with me. You know, just so we're all on the same page. That was my deflection, my stall tactic. Because inside, my mind was already sprinting. I couldn't tear up the document, not with a notary present. That would be too aggressive, too suspicious. But I also couldn't let it sit here on my table like a ticking bomb with my name on it. So I leaned into the teacher version of myself, calm, kind, professional. Thank you for bringing this by, I said, even as my heart pounded like a drum. I really do appreciate that you care about clarity. But you understand, it's a marriage now, and we make decisions together. Loretta's face stayed frozen in that tight smile. But of course, she said coolly. Wouldn't want you to feel ambushed. Too late for that, I thought. The notary began packing up. Loretta stood, slowly, adjusting the cuff of her jacket like she had all the time in the world. Well, Jenna, she said, her voice sugary again. Let's just hope there are no secrets that could come back to bite us later. Secrets have a funny way of leaking. She let that sit there. Heavy. I walked them both to the door. The notary thanked me politely and stepped out onto the porch. Loretta lingered. I'll let Ryan know I dropped by, she added. I'm sure he'll be thrilled, I said, smiling tightly. She gave a short nod, and for a second, the mask slipped. Just for a second. What I saw beneath it wasn't just suspicion, it was calculation. She knew there was something. I shut the door and leaned against it, listening to the quiet click of her heels fading away. My hands were still trembling. This wasn't about family clarity. It never had been. This was about control, ownership, power. And I had just dodged a bullet. Barely. I walked back into the living room and stared at the empty space where the envelope had been. If she was playing chess, I needed to stop playing checkers. I pulled out my laptop and opened my password manager. I logged into the private email account my grandmother had used to send me the scanned deeds 5 years ago, downloaded everything, printed it again, double-checked the notarizations, reread her final message. Protect these, don't trust fast smiles, don't give until they've earned it. Grandma Ella always did see right through people. I looked down at the stack of papers now sitting on my lap, the deeds, the property tax confirmations, the rental income statements, 3 apartments, all fully paid off. In my name. And now, barely 10 days into my marriage, I was already lying to my husband. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Because if I didn't, I'd lose everything. That prenup wasn't a formality, it was a warning shot, and I'd be damned if I let Loretta aim again. I stood, tucked the papers into a manila folder, and locked them in the filing cabinet in our closet behind an old box of Christmas lights. Then I whispered aloud, like a vow. I'm not signing this. Not without Ryan. That night, the kitchen felt too quiet, like the house was holding its breath with me. I'd reheated leftover casserole, set out 2 plates, lit the cheap vanilla candle we got from Target during our honeymoon grocery run. From the outside, it was a picture of newlywed calm. Inside, my nerves were shredded. Ryan walked through the door just after 6:30, still in his khakis and button-down from the accounting firm. He looked tired, but he smiled when he saw me. Smells good, he said, dropping his keys in the bowl. What's the occasion? I smiled back, forced. Just wanted us to eat together tonight. We sat. We ate. I asked about his day. He asked about mine. For 10 minutes, I almost convinced myself not to bring it up. Almost. But then I remembered Loretta's eyes, how calculating they were behind her fake warmth. And I remembered the clause in that prenup, the one that could cost me everything if I stayed quiet too long. I had a visitor today, I said, my fork pausing mid-air. Ryan looked up. Yeah? Your mom stopped by, unannounced. He blinked. Really? Why? She brought a notary. He straightened, confused. A what? A notary, and a prenup, or something like it. Called it a family wealth clarity agreement. His mouth parted slightly. What? She wanted me to sign it on the spot, I said, keeping my voice steady. There was a clause about undisclosed assets becoming joint property after 30 days of marriage. Ryan pushed his plate back, face hardening. She had no right to do that. I didn't know anything about it. I figured. He rubbed his forehead, then looked at me. Did you sign? I shook my head. No. I told her I wasn't signing anything without you. A long exhale. Good. Silence stretched between us, thick and tight. Then he added, softer. She gets anxious about money. Always has. After Dad's heart attack, she spiraled. That's not an excuse, but she probably thinks she's protecting me. That's when it hit me. He meant well. He loved me. But he didn't see it. He didn't see the manipulation, the trap, the slow tightening of control she was wrapping around our lives. I forced a nod. Yeah, maybe. Ryan stood up, took both our plates to the sink. I'll talk to her. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. You don't have to do that tonight, I said quickly, because I knew how that conversation would go. Loretta would cry, she'd spin it, she'd say I misunderstood. And Ryan, the good son that he was, would believe her. Maybe not fully, but enough. Still, he said, drying his hands. You shouldn't have had to deal with that alone. I leaned against the counter, watching him rinse dishes. And that's when it happened. That flicker of doubt in my chest. If I told him about the condos now, if I told him the full truth, would he protect me? Or would he try to smooth things over, like always? Keep the peace, like he was raised to do. He was a good man, a decent man. But good men raised by controlling mothers sometimes struggle to tell the difference between love and loyalty. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't sure I could trust him with this. Not yet. Not with everything. I stepped behind him, wrapped my arms around his waist. He leaned back into me, like he always did. I love you, Ryan, I whispered. I love you too. We stood there in the quiet hum of our kitchen, our feet on cheap tile, the smell of vanilla still lingering in the air. And I made my decision. I wasn't telling him about the inheritance, not tonight, not yet, not until I knew, really knew, whose side he was on when the storm hit, because the storm was coming. Loretta had seen something in my eyes. She didn't know what I had, not yet, but she knew I was hiding something. And women like her? They don't rest until they've cracked you open. So I would stay quiet. I would protect what was mine. And I would watch, carefully, how my husband moved in the days to come. Because silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes silence is strategy. And sometimes silence is survival. I've learned that in the South, every betrayal starts with a compliment and a refill of sweet tea. Loretta had invited us over for what she called a casual Sunday supper. Just family, just fried chicken, just catching up. But I'd lived long enough in her orbit to know nothing she did was ever just anything. She'd even asked me to bring my grandmother's banana pudding recipe. Said it'd be cute to share a little something from my humble roots. That was the first red flag. By the time we arrived, me in my best denim skirt and Ryan holding a mason jar of sweet tea like it was a peace offering, Loretta had already set the tone. Porch lights glowing, silverware gleaming, napkins monogrammed in that expensive embroidered cursive that screamed old money trying too hard. Inside, the table was crowded. Ryan's Uncle Dan and his wife, Aunt Clara, their daughter Lily, a cousin or two I barely remembered, and Loretta at the head of it all, in pearls and a linen blouse like she was hosting a charity auction. Jenna, she purred as I walked in. You look darling. That dress is almost vintage, isn't it? Translation. You look inexpensive. I smiled. Thanks. Found it at a consignment shop near the school. Teacher discount. The smile she gave me didn't quite reach her eyes. How thrifty. Dinner started slow. Fried okra, low-stakes chit-chat, a few safe jabs about SEC football. I kept my answers short, polite. Ryan sat beside me, squeezing my hand under the table every so often like he could sense the tension. Then came round 2 of tea, and the first jab. So Jenna, Loretta said, folding her napkin just so. Remind me again, what do your parents do? Here we go. Retired now, I said carefully. Mom was a nurse. Dad worked construction most of his life. Loretta tilted her head. That's right. Such grounded work. And your grandmother? She lived in Asheville, didn't she? Yep. Modest little house, if I remember. It was cozy. Oh, I'm sure. Nothing wrong with modest beginnings. Translation. You had nothing before we came along. Then Aunt Clara chimed in. Bless her. I thought Ella did real estate, she said, reaching for another biscuit. Didn't she own some rental properties back in the day? I dropped my fork. There it was. Slipped in casual, like it didn't matter. But it mattered. Loretta's eyes flicked to mine so fast it gave me whiplash. She did? Loretta asked, her voice light. Too light. I forced a chuckle. Nothing big. She dabbled, like a lot of folks. Mostly small-town stuff. A duplex, maybe. Nothing that made real money. A beat of silence. Everyone chewing, blinking, pretending they weren't listening. Loretta leaned in slightly. Funny, that never came up. You'd think real estate might have come in handy, given how hard it is for young couples to get started these days. My mouth was dry. The banana pudding sat in my stomach like a brick. She didn't leave me any of it, I said quickly. Sold it years ago, from what I know. She used most of it for her care when she got sick. Ryan shot me a glance, the kind he gave me when I was telling half-truths. But he stayed quiet. Loretta smiled again. Of course, that makes sense. You know, in this family we believe in being transparent, especially when it comes to assets. No surprises, no secrets. It just keeps things clean. Clean. That word sliced deeper than I expected. I nodded slowly, reaching for my tea like it could shield me. Aunt Clara, sensing tension, tried to pivot the conversation, but it was too late. Loretta had locked on, and she wasn't done. I do hope, Jenna, she said sweetly, that you're not holding anything back. Because if there's one thing I've learned in this life, it's that secrets have a way of making their way to the surface. She said it like a proverb, a sermon, a warning wrapped in Southern charm. My pulse thumped in my ears. No secrets here, I said. Good, she replied, leaning back with a smile. Because if you're hiding anything, honey, she paused. Let the silence thicken. Now's the time to come clean. The air left my lungs, and in that moment, surrounded by crystal glasses and butter dishes, I understood the real game Loretta was playing. This wasn't dinner. It was a deposition, with sweet tea. She didn't have proof, not yet, but she had questions, she had suspicion, and now, thanks to Aunt Clara's innocent mouth, she had a direction. I excused myself to the bathroom 2 minutes later, locked the door, and stared at myself in the mirror. My hands were shaking. This was no longer about being liked, or fitting in. This was war. A quiet one, yes, but every bit as calculated. I splashed cold water on my face and looked myself dead in the eye. You cannot afford to break. Not here. Not now. Because the next time she asked, she might not come with tea and charm. She might come with lawyers. And when she did, I had to be ready. There's something cold and sacred about a safety deposit box. Not just the steel, not just the quiet. But what's inside? The kind of secrets that don't yell. They wait. It had been 6 months since Grandma Ella passed when I finally opened the one she left for me at a tiny credit union just outside Asheville. I still remember the way the bank manager fumbled with the keys, trying to make conversation while my hands shook so badly I could barely hold a pen to sign the access form. Must have been a special lady, he said, nodding toward the sealed envelope in my lap. She was, I whispered. Still is. Inside the box was no jewelry, no family photos, no handwritten letters, just 3 manila folders, each with a sticky note, each labeled in her careful, slanted handwriting. Downtown. Hilltop. Oakview. Property names. I didn't understand at first, until I opened the folders and saw the titles. Grant deeds. Mortgage releases. Rental agreements. All signed, all current, all in my name. I blinked. I reread. I counted the zeros. Then I heard her voice in my head like it was yesterday, that raspy drawl full of honey and grit. Don't tell a soul until you know who you're dealing with, baby girl. Not even your future husband. Especially not him. Back then, I thought she was being dramatic. Now I understood. Grandma Ella was the kind of woman who didn't ask for permission to own land. She built equity behind closed doors, collected rent like clockwork, and smiled like she had nothing. She'd grown up dirt poor in the Blue Ridge Mountains and spent her whole life watching men take credit for what women built. So, before she passed, she made sure I had something that couldn't be talked away, gifted out, or manipulated. 3 fully paid properties. Modest, sure. But they were mine, and they were invisible, unless I let them be seen. I kept everything hidden in a lockbox tucked behind cleaning supplies in the back of my old closet. The deeds, the tax receipts, even the rental income checks that came monthly like clockwork. I'd deposit them under a quiet LLC name she'd helped me create before she passed. ME3 Holdings. ME stood for Melissa Ella. No one, not even Ryan, knew that part. I'd rented the condos to families and single moms, kept the rates fair, handled minor repairs myself when I could. And every month, I watched a small pile of financial security grow. But I never felt rich, just safe, quietly safe. Until Loretta knocked on my door with that prenup and forced me to remember, nothing stays quiet forever. That night, after dinner at her house and that not-so-innocent interrogation, I drove back to my old apartment. Alone. I dug the lockbox out from behind a stack of plastic bins, sat cross-legged on the carpet like I used to, long before marriage, before Caleb, before Greenville. I opened the folders, touched the paper edges like they could still carry her warmth. There were sticky notes she'd left on the backs of each deed. On downtown, she wrote, close to the bus line, always keep it for single moms. On Hilltop, watch the pipes every winter, you'll thank me later. And on Oakview, that one's your nest. Don't let anyone touch it, ever. I cried. For her, for everything I couldn't say at dinner. For the fact that I was hiding not money, but history, legacy, wisdom disguised as paperwork. Then I did what I hadn't done in months. I took out the deposit checks, $1,200, $1,350, $1,100, and reread the bank slips. This wasn't just real estate. It was insulation. From people like Loretta, from future storms. And yet, for all that security, I'd never felt more alone. Because what good is an inheritance when you can't share it? When the one person you love, the one you married, might not understand why you didn't trust him with it. I sat there in the half-dark, no music, no TV, just the sound of paper crinkling and a worn-out air vent blowing cool air on my ankles, and I said it out loud, finally. I have 3 condos in my name, and no one to tell. No one who wouldn't try to take, twist, or judge. Except maybe Caleb someday. When he's old enough to understand that some legacies come with secrets, and some secrets protect legacies. I slid the papers back into the box, locked it shut, and whispered a silent promise to Ella. I won't let them steal what you gave me. Not with sugar-coated smiles. Not with contracts. Not with guilt. If this story touches you, drop a number 1 in the comments. Every one reminds us that these stories matter, and it gives us the motivation to keep sharing them with you. They say when you have a baby, everyone wants to help. What they don't say is that some people want to control, and when that someone is your mother-in-law, With time, money, and opinions she throws like darts, well, help becomes a battleground in pastels. It started at my baby shower. We were halfway through cupcakes when Loretta stood up, clinked her lemonade glass with her French-tipped nail, and said loud enough for the entire room to hear, "Y'all, Jenna's registry was a little, how do I put this, modest. So Harold and I took the liberty of upgrading a few things. I mean, our grandson deserves the best, right?" I laughed politely, because what else could I do? But my chest tightened. She hadn't just upgraded a few things. She'd replaced nearly everything on my list. The wooden crib I picked out after hours of research, gone. She ordered one with Bluetooth, a mattress that adjusts to sleep patterns, and a built-in nightlight that changed colors. I wanted a hand-woven Moses basket from a Black-owned Etsy shop. She replaced it with a rolling bassinet that looked like it belonged on a spaceship. And the worst part? People clapped. Everyone oohed and awed as Loretta unboxed items I hadn't chosen, hadn't asked for, and frankly, didn't want. I smiled because I had to. Because in Southern circles, you don't embarrass your mother-in-law in public, especially not when she's got her checkbook out. But inside, something cracked. It wasn't about the money, it was about erasure. This was my first child, my first nursery, my moment. And she'd walked in like a designer at a clearance sale, tearing down everything I'd lovingly built. The next day, I tried to reclaim my space. I returned a few of her gifts. Not all. Just the ones that didn't align with my vision, my budget, my heart. I told Ryan gently, "I just want the room to feel like us, not a Pottery Barn catalog sponsored by your mom." He nodded, half listening, already checking fantasy football scores on his phone. "Yeah, I get it," he mumbled. "Just don't hurt her feelings too much." I bit my tongue, because it wasn't just about feelings anymore, it was about boundaries. But Loretta didn't recognize boundaries, not when it came to her grandchild. A week later, I came home from work and the house smelled like fresh paint. My stomach dropped. I walked down the hall, into the nursery, and there she was, standing in my son's half-finished room with 2 contractors and a tape measure. The walls were now powder blue. Not the earthy sage I'd chosen. The mural I'd planned to paint with my best friend? Covered. She'd even moved the glider. My glider. The one I picked out with Grandma Ella when I first told her I was pregnant. Loretta turned around, smiling like she'd done me the biggest favor in the world. "Surprise! Thought I'd help move things along. This room was feeling drab." I didn't speak. Couldn't. Because rage, when it's polite, doesn't scream. It simmers. I turned, walked into the kitchen, and gripped the edge of the counter. In that moment, I realized something terrifying. She wasn't decorating. She was staking claim. This wasn't just about paint or baby monitors. It was about control, about rewriting my motherhood before it had even started. Later that night, I told Ryan what she'd done. His response? "I mean, it looks good, babe." And she meant well. I stared at him. I wanted to say, "You can't be neutral in a war you're not fighting." But I didn't. Not yet. Because I still wanted peace. Because I still believed maybe, just maybe, he'd see what I saw. That this wasn't about love. It was about power. A few days passed. I adjusted. Again. Moved a few things back where I wanted them. Quietly returned the rocking horse that sang lullabies in 4 languages. Rehung the mobile I'd made by hand with little felt clouds and stars. It was late Saturday morning when I caught her. I'd gone to grab laundry from the dryer. Was gone 5, maybe 6 minutes. When I walked back into the nursery, Loretta was there. Alone. Hands full of folded onesies. Rearranging drawers. Moving the humidifier to a different outlet. Repositioning the crib. I stood in the doorway, frozen. She didn't hear me at first. She was humming, something from the 70s, and then she looked up, paused, and smiled. Oh, hey, Jenna. Just straightening things up a bit. This layout flows better, don't you think? I didn't smile back, because in that moment, I knew something for sure. If I didn't draw a line now, she'd never stop. I stepped into the room, closed the door softly behind me, and said the words I'd been holding back. Loretta, we need to talk about boundaries. You ever feel your stomach drop before your phone even finishes ringing? That was me, standing in the school parking lot, balancing a tote bag, my purse, and a half-spilled cup of decaf, when my realtor's name lit up my screen. Hey, Jenna. Her voice was tight. You got a sec. Something weird came up. I stepped away from the carpool lane. Sure. What's going on? Someone named Loretta came into our office. Said she was helping a friend look for condos, but then she asked specifically about your unit on Calhoun Street. I stopped breathing for a second. My rental unit? Yeah. She didn't mention you by name, but she recognized the building. Then she asked if the one with the vintage floral wallpaper and clawfoot tub was available. That's yours, right? I nodded slowly, though she couldn't see me. The blood drained from my face. She left before I could say much, my realtor added. But she knew exactly what to look for. That was the moment I knew. Loretta had seen something. And the thing about Loretta? Once she got a thread, she pulled until the whole thing unraveled. 2 days earlier, it had been innocent enough. One of my tenants, Laura, sweet girl yoga instructor, had asked if it was okay for her friend to tour the place. She was considering moving to Raleigh and wanted to sublet the unit in a few months. I agreed. I even gave the property manager permission to show it during open hours. What I didn't realize was that Laura's friend was connected to someone who gossiped with someone who brunched with Loretta every other Sunday. Small world, smaller town. And Loretta? She was the queen of accidental discoveries. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen, flipping through rental records, checking everything twice. The leases were watertight. The property taxes were paid. The LLC my grandmother had set up was still active, still private, still separate from my marital assets. But I wasn't worried about the paperwork. I was worried about the narrative. Because once Loretta had a narrative, especially one with a dollar sign in it, she'd weaponize it like a Sunday sermon. I didn't tell Ryan, not yet. He was busy grading papers, feet propped up, laughing at something on his phone. I watched him for a moment. I loved him. I trusted him. But not enough to hand him ammo he didn't know how to use. The next morning, it started. Loretta texted me a photo. No caption, just the picture. It was a close-up of the condo building, taken from across the street. Zoom in, and you'd see the balcony I'd had refurbished last year, the light fixture I'd chosen from a local artisan, the mailbox with the faint JC monogram still etched from when I first moved in. She knew. She absolutely knew. I waited a full hour before responding. Finally, I wrote back. Cute building. Want me to refer you to a realtor? Her response came quick. No need. Already asked around. You've got great taste. Especially in income properties. That winking emoji? It hit harder than any slap. By dinner, I was unraveling. I snapped at the pasta for boiling over, snapped at the dog for barking, snapped at myself for not seeing this coming. Ryan noticed. You okay? I nodded. Too fast. Just tired. He hesitated. Watched me for a moment like he wanted to press, but didn't. And that hurt more than it should have, because in that silence, I felt the weight of every secret I was still carrying. The next morning, it got worse. A woman named Teresa, Loretta's brunch buddy, tagged me in a local Facebook group post asking for condo recommendations in central Raleigh. She wrote, looking for something charming, older character, exposed brick, something like what Jenna Carpenter might know about. The smirks were getting bolder, the insinuations louder. I didn't respond. Not online, not in texts, not even when Loretta called twice in a row. Instead, I sat on my back porch that evening, sipping tea I couldn't taste, and whispered to myself, "She's closing in." Because if she found out about one, it was only a matter of time before she found the other two. That night, the phone rang again. It was my realtor. "Hey, sorry to bug you again, but I thought you should know, Loretta came back. This time she brought someone else. A woman named Teresa?" "Yeah," I said slowly. "They didn't ask much, just pointed to your unit and smiled." Silence. "I don't know what's going on, Jenna," she added, voice softer now. "But be careful. These ladies don't seem like casual buyers." I swallowed. "Thanks for the heads up." "You're welcome. Just protect what's yours, okay?" I hung up the phone and stared into the dark. She was digging, and she was getting close. And the worst part? I didn't know if Ryan would be on my side when the truth finally broke through. I turned off the porch light and whispered to myself, if she finds out about the third one, everything changes. You'd think a family barbecue would be safe ground. Hot dogs, lawn chairs, that one uncle who still wears cargo shorts unironically. I was standing by the grill, flipping burgers, trying to shake off the weight of the last few days. I kept reminding myself, this is Caleb's first big family gathering. Keep it light, keep it together. But I should have known, Loretta doesn't host gatherings. She sets stages. And today, I was her main act. It started subtle. She floated from group to group with that glass of lemonade she never actually sipped, laughing too loud, whispering behind sunglasses. Her voice would trail off just as someone looked my way. I caught it the third time she did it. Aunt Marlene glanced at me, squinting like I'd grown another head. Cousin Justin nodded slowly, like he was putting a puzzle together he didn't know he had. I turned to Ryan. He was playing cornhole with his brother, oblivious, happy. For now. Then came the moment. Loretta tapped the side of her glass with a fork. The kind of dainty tap that demands silence. Conversations faded. The kids stopped running. And just like that, I knew. This wasn't a toast. It was a takedown. "I just want to say how grateful I am that everyone's here," Loretta began, her smile just a little too sharp. "Family means everything, especially when it comes to trust and transparency." Pause. Sip. Smile. Which is why I was shocked, absolutely shocked, to learn something this week. My stomach turned. Ryan glanced at me, puzzled. "Turns out," Loretta continued, "our dear Jenna owns not one, not two, but 3 condos. All in her name, all kept very quiet." She said quiet like it was a curse word. Gasps, whispers, eyes, all of them, on me. I didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't let her see the blood rushing out of my face. "That's interesting, isn't it?" Loretta added, pretending to address no one in particular. "When someone marries into a family and forgets to mention they're sitting on a real estate portfolio." I locked eyes with her and smiled. "You forgot to mention you're behind on your mortgage," I said sweetly. A few chuckles rippled, nervous ones, but the damage was done. Ryan was staring at me, like he didn't recognize me, like he was trying to reassemble the version of me he thought he married. I pulled him aside, fast, before Loretta could dig the knife in deeper. We ended up near the shed, behind the string lights and picnic tables, just far enough for privacy, but not far enough for safety. "Is it true?" he asked. He didn't sound angry, just wounded. And somehow, that was worse. "Yes," I said. "I was going to tell you, 3 apartments, Jenna. And you didn't think I needed to know? I swallowed hard. It's not about you, Ryan. It was from my grandmother. She told me to wait, to be sure of who I was dealing with. And you weren't sure about me? I wasn't sure about your mother. That hit him. He looked away. I wanted to scream, to sob, to confess everything and beg for understanding, but not here, not like this. I never touched the money, I said. Never used it against you. Never used it for myself either. I just held it, protected it. From my family? From manipulation. He was quiet. Then, why would she say it like that? Why now? I almost laughed. Because she wants it, or control of it, or some version of control over me. And now she knew. And now it was open season. We went back to the barbecue, side by side but a mile apart. Loretta was all smiles again, like she hadn't just detonated a bomb in front of her entire extended family. People kept their distance. No one asked me about the condos directly, but the stares were loaded. The questions hung in the air like smoke. If she's got that kind of money, why is she still teaching? Why didn't she tell Ryan? What else is she hiding? The whispers stung more than the confrontation. Because those were the things you couldn't answer in one sentence. Those were the doubts you couldn't shake with a smile. Caleb ran toward me, ketchup all over his face, yelling about bubbles. I scooped him up and kissed his cheek, even though my hands were shaking. He didn't care about condos or inheritance or family politics. He just wanted his mama. And in that moment, I decided, no matter how loud Loretta got, I wasn't playing defense anymore. That night, after Caleb was asleep, Ryan and I sat in silence on the back porch. The air was thick with humidity and things unsaid. Finally, he spoke. I want to understand. I really do. But it feels like I married someone who didn't trust me enough to be honest. I turned to him. And I feel like I married into a family that would have eaten me alive if I had been. His jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. Chapter. Ryan looked at me like he didn't recognize the woman he married. And maybe, in that moment, I didn't recognize myself either. The fireworks outside our window were still crackling long after the 4th of July BBQ ended. But inside our bedroom, the silence was deafening. Ryan sat at the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. I stood across the room, still in the same sundress from earlier, the fabric damp under my arms from stress sweat. Neither of us had spoken since we got home. Not really, just closed the door, put Caleb to bed, and started avoiding each other like strangers in the same storm. But we weren't strangers, not yet, and I was done hiding. I sank down onto the bed beside him. Careful, quiet. Do you want to know everything? I asked. He didn't look at me, just gave the smallest nod. So I told him. All of it. I started with Grandma Ella, the woman who raised me when my mom couldn't. Who taught me how to stretch a dollar and never sign anything without reading the fine print. The one who worked her entire life as a school secretary and still managed to buy 3 small condos in Asheville, one by one, over 30 years. She didn't tell anyone, I whispered. Not even my mom. Said people start acting funny when they think there's something to take. Then I told him about the will, the deeds. The lawyer who handed me a folder and said, "Your grandmother was smart. She protected these from probate and taxes." She told me to wait, I said, voice cracking. To see who I married before I told a soul. Ryan finally looked up. So, you didn't trust me, he said. Flat, not angry, just disappointed. And that gutted me more than a yell ever could. I didn't trust what might happen to us if other people knew, I said. Especially your mother. Ryan, she brought a prenup 10 days after our wedding. She came to our door with a notary. His eyes flashed. What? You weren't here. I told her no. I stalled. I lied and said I had nothing, and I didn't say a word to you because I was still praying I was wrong about her. Silence. My throat closed. I was scared, Ryan. Not just of losing money, of losing you, of making this some weird power imbalance, of becoming someone I'm not. I was crying now. Hot, messy tears that burned my cheeks. I still clip coupons. I still teach public school. I still make dinner 5 nights a week. Those condos aren't my life. They're just my backup plan. My safety net. Because I've never had one before. Ryan let out a long, shaky breath, then stood up. I braced for it. The blow-up, the accusation, the storm. But instead, he crossed the room and sat on the floor in front of me, legs folded, eyes searching. You should have told me, he said quietly. But I get it. I do. I blinked through tears. You do? Yeah. My mom's a lot. And if someone told me years ago that a woman would marry me and come with her own armor and battle strategy, I'd probably have said, good, she'll need it. I laughed, a broken little laugh that turned into another sob. I married you, Jenna. Not your money, not your silence, not your fear. You. Then he took my hand. But she knows now, and you're right. She won't stop. I nodded slowly, heart hammering, because that was the real fear. It wasn't just about hiding the truth from Ryan anymore. It was about what Loretta would do with that truth, how she'd twist it, how she'd leverage it, how she'd try to control it, or take it. Ryan stood and kissed the top of my head. We'll figure it out, together, but no more secrets, okay? I nodded again. Okay. He walked toward the door, then turned. And Jenna? Yeah? I'm proud of you. You protected what you built. That's not something to feel ashamed of. That broke me a little, in a good way. After he left to check on Caleb, I sat on the bed alone, fireworks still bursting outside, but somehow the real explosion had already happened inside me. Everything was out now. No more hiding, no more pretending. But that meant something else, too. The war was officially on. Because now that Loretta knew, she wouldn't come with notaries. She'd come with plans, with whispers, with offers, with pressure. And this time, I wasn't just guarding money. I was guarding peace, marriage, motherhood, my own damn sanity. But now she knows, and she won't stop. And I wouldn't either. Because this wasn't about real estate anymore. It was about territory. And I was done giving mine up without a fight. If you've ever had your name whispered in a school hallway, not by students, but by other moms in cardigans and pearl earrings, you know the sting I felt that Thursday morning. I'd barely poured my coffee at the PTA meeting before I noticed it. The sideways glances, the fake smiles, the sudden hush when I walked past the fundraising table. Something had shifted, and not in a good way. It was Mrs. Tate, God bless her, that tipped me off first. She leaned over during the meeting, while another mom droned on about themed cupcakes and whispered, Jenna, just so you know, there's been some chatter. I blinked. Chatter? She hesitated. Some folks think you're, well, hiding resources. My chest tightened. Resources? Her lips pressed together in a wince. Apparently, someone said you inherited 3 condos and you're just letting them sit while the school's still trying to raise money for the library. My blood went cold. And I didn't have to ask who someone was. After the meeting, I stepped outside and stood under the magnolia tree near the parking lot. I needed air. I needed to scream. Instead, I called Ryan. She told strangers about the inheritance, I hissed the moment he answered. He sighed. Mom mentioned something at Dad's poker night. I told her to knock it off. She's turning my son's school into a rumor mill. She's calling me selfish because I didn't write a check to fix the copier. Jenna, I get it. I'm sorry. No, Ryan, you don't get it. This isn't just embarrassing, it's dangerous. She's using Caleb's school to paint me as some greedy witch. There was a pause. I'll talk to her. No, I snapped. I'll talk to her. My way. But Loretta, as usual, beat me to it. That afternoon, I stopped by the front office to drop off Caleb's lunchbox. He forgot it, again, and I overheard her sugary voice floating through the window. I'd love to contribute to the art program, and I'd be happy to help coordinate something ongoing, maybe a family endowment? My stomach flipped. Endowment? She was donating in our name. To Caleb's school. Without even telling us. The receptionist caught my expression and smiled nervously. Oh, Mrs. Henderson's inside meeting with Mrs. Rayburn about classroom support. Why? I asked. She said she's exploring options to observe her grandson's learning environment. Just wants to be involved. My vision narrowed, like the whole hallway collapsed into a pinpoint. Observe? You mean sit in his class? The woman shrugged. That's what she asked. Said she had parental consent. I didn't wait. I walked straight into the office. Loretta sat across from the preschool director, a glossy folder on her lap and a saccharine smile on her face. Oh, Jenna, she chirped. What a coincidence. Mrs. Rayburn looked up, surprised. We were just done, I said. You're done. Loretta blinked. Excuse me? I turned to the director. My son does not need additional observers in his classroom. If Loretta wants to help, she can donate anonymously like everyone else. Ms. Rayburn looked between us, uncomfortable. Of course. We just assumed. No assumptions, I said calmly. I'm his mother. She's not authorized for anything involving his education. Loretta's smile cracked. I was only trying to help, Jenna. Funny, I said. That's the same thing you said when you brought a notary to my front door. We walked out in silence. Tense, hot. Southern humidity pressing against my back like judgment. She followed me halfway to my car. You're being territorial. You're being invasive. She stopped walking. I raised a good man. Don't turn him against his family. I turned slowly. He married me, not your approval rating. Her face went pale. For once, she had no quick retort. Chapter bus. That night, I sat on the couch with Ryan and told him everything. Every word, every whisper, every meeting. He rubbed his temples. I don't know what to do anymore. Support me. That's what you do. He looked at me then, really looked, and nodded. Okay, starting now. But the next morning, I got a call from Caleb's teacher. Her voice was calm, professional, but the undertone was clear. Hi, Mrs. Walker. Just a quick note, your mother-in-law came by again this morning. She asked if she could sit in on Caleb's class next week. Said she had your permission. I nearly dropped the phone. What? We didn't let her in, of course, but I just wanted to double-check with you directly. Thank you, I said, gripping the counter. Absolutely not. And please don't let her near my son's classroom again. Understood, the teacher said. But I thought you should know. She was persistent. I hung up and stared out the window. Something in me hardened. This wasn't just overstepping. This was war. And now she was using my child. That changed everything. Your mother-in-law wanted to observe your son's class. The line echoed like a warning siren. She wasn't just after my property anymore. She was coming for my peace, my privacy, my son. It was raining the day I decided I was done playing defense. I sat in my car outside the law office, hands clenched around the steering wheel, watching the drops streak down the windshield like slow tears. But I wasn't crying. Not anymore. Loretta had pushed every boundary, my marriage, my finances, even my son's classroom, and I kept reacting, dodging, blocking, explaining. But today, I wasn't going to explain a thing. I was going to protect what was mine. The office was small but sharp, glass walls, modern art, a faint scent of cedar and printer ink. My cousin Tasha met me in the lobby, a thick folder in her hands and confidence in her heels. She was a corporate attorney in Charlotte, sharp-tongued, no nonsense, and had been watching from the sidelines long enough. "You ready to make it permanent?" she asked. I nodded. "More than ready." We sat down across from Mr. Halverson, a soft-spoken estate attorney who wore glasses on a chain and had an expression like he'd seen every family fight that ever existed. Tasha slid the paperwork across the table. My cousin would like to place one of her properties into an irrevocable trust for her minor child. She'll be the primary trustee, and I'll be secondary. Mr. Halverson nodded, reviewing the file. Purpose? Protection, I said. From meddling relatives and future entitlement. He didn't flinch, just reached for a pen. Smart move. The trust would make the condo legally untouchable. No one, not Ryan, not Loretta, not even me without due cause, could sell, transfer, or tamper with it outside the boundaries of the trust. The property would sit quietly, appreciating over time, with all rental income funneled directly into an account for Caleb's future, college, therapy, whatever he needed when he grew up. It was locked, safe, out of reach. And for the first time in months, I exhaled. Tasha and I stepped outside, under the now clearing sky. The rain had stopped. She hugged me tight. You did the right thing. This isn't selfish. It's smart. She keeps pushing, I whispered. But now, there's nothing left to push through. Exactly, she said. You don't need to out-argue someone like Loretta. You just need to outmaneuver her. That evening, I told Ryan. I sat across from him at the kitchen table, the trust documents laid out between us like a quiet declaration of independence. He looked at the folder, then at me. You did this without telling me. Yes, I said softly, because it's not about us. It's about protecting Caleb's future. From my mom. From anyone, including me. He leaned back in his chair, silent. Ryan, I said gently, I need to stop living in a reaction to your mother's behavior. I need to start building something real, something protected, something Caleb can grow into. He nodded slowly. I get it. And then, to my surprise, he stood up and hugged me. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner, he whispered. The next day, Loretta called. Hi, honey, she said sweetly. I was thinking, maybe we should open a family account, something we all contribute to, for Caleb's future. I smiled into the phone. We already did. Oh? I opened a trust for him. Irrevocable. One of the condos is now in his name. Silence. Legally speaking, it's out of reach, I added. Even mine, that's the point. Another beat of silence. Why didn't you tell me? She finally asked. Because it wasn't yours to know. She didn't call again for a while, and honestly, the silence was a gift. Over the next few weeks, things shifted. No more surprise drop-ins, no more questions about property taxes or school donations, no more whispered rumors in the PTA hallway. Loretta wasn't gone, but her power was. And in that space, I found something I hadn't felt in months: clarity. I wasn't just defending what Grandma Ella had given me, I was honoring it. One evening, I went up to the attic and opened the old cedar chest where I kept Ella's handwritten letters and photographs. Her voice echoed in my memory, firm and full of wisdom. Don't tell a soul until you know who you're dealing with. Protect what's yours. Build slow. Trust slower. I smiled through the lump in my throat. I'm doing it, Grandma, I whispered. I'm finally doing it. I took the framed trust certificate and placed it beside Caleb's baby photo on the mantel. Not for show, for peace, because I didn't need to scream to prove I was strong. I didn't need to fight to prove I was right. I just needed to shut the door, lock it, and move on. I didn't need to fight. I needed to lock the door. And now it was locked. The trust was signed. The lines were drawn. And Loretta, she had no keys. I should have known something was off the second I saw cupcakes on the conference table. Loretta never baked. And Harold, my father-in-law, didn't believe in sugar unless it came in a whiskey glass. But there they were, 6 perfectly frosted red velvet cupcakes lined up next to a manila folder and a stack of printed financials. We just wanted this to feel friendly, Loretta said with a too-wide smile. Ryan gave me a warning glance. I gave him one back. Friendly. I could already taste the manipulation. We were in Harold's logistics office, brick walls, cheap blinds, and the hum of printers in the background. He ran a small fleet of trucks that delivered produce across state lines. It wasn't glamorous, but it had been his pride for years. Lately, though, things hadn't looked so proud. 3 drivers quit. A delivery fell through due to an insurance lapse. Rumors of late payments floated around like bad perfume. Still, I hadn't expected this. We want to expand, Harold said, sliding the folder across the table. Buy 2 new rigs, upgrade the software, hire another dispatcher, get back on top. And how can we help? Ryan asked, too quickly. Loretta placed a hand over mine. Her nails were done in a pale pink that didn't match the red-hot gleam in her eyes. With your properties, honey, she said sweetly. Just one of those apartments could get us the loan we need. I stared at her hand. Then at the folder, then at Ryan. You want me to use one of the apartments as collateral? Not use, Loretta said quickly. Just list it, on paper. We'd handle everything. No risk to you. I let the silence breathe. Let it stretch long enough to see if anyone in the room would realize how outrageous this was. No, I said softly. Harold blinked. Excuse me? I said no. I won't put my property on the line. Not for this. But it's family, Loretta pressed. We're asking you to help family. Family doesn't ambush newlyweds with prenups and legal traps, I said, my voice rising just enough to cut the sugar in the air. Ryan shifted in his seat. Harold leaned back and crossed his arms. We're not asking you to give it away, he said gruffly. We're talking investment, partnership. That's funny, I said, forcing a smile. Because I wasn't invited to be a partner when you built this company. But now that it's sinking, suddenly I'm the lifeline? Loretta gasped like I'd slapped her. That's not fair, Jenna. Neither is trying to guilt me into financing a business I had no say in with property you never earned. I stood up. Ryan did too, but more slowly, caught between them and me like always. I'm not mixing my inheritance into your liabilities, I said, calm now, clear. I worked hard to protect what my grandmother left me. I'm not going to risk it, just to be seen as loyal. So that's it? Loretta said quietly. You're choosing money over family? No, I said. I'm choosing boundaries. There's a difference. We walked out. The cupcakes sat untouched. That night, Ryan was quiet. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his socks like they held the answers. They're just scared, he said finally. My dad's always been stubborn, but this? It was desperation. And I'm sorry they're struggling, I said. But desperation doesn't give them the right to pressure me. They want me to bail them out, not support them. That's different. He nodded slowly. You were right to say no. Then he added more softly, but Mom doesn't see it that way. I found out what he meant the next Sunday. We were at church, shaking hands and smiling, when Loretta leaned in close to Ryan during the fellowship hour. I didn't hear the full sentence, but I caught the last part. She doesn't care about our family. My stomach dropped. Later, in the car, Ryan turned to me. She said you're making it clear where your priorities lie. I looked out the window, jaw clenched. She's not wrong, I said. My priority is our son, our future, and not letting toxic entitlement define what family means. He reached over, took my hand. Then we're on the same side. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I doubted myself, but because I knew the next phase was coming. They tried pressure, then guilt, and now they'd move on to isolation. But I was ready. She looked me straight in the eyes. All motherly sweetness faded and whispered to Ryan, loud enough for me to hear, She doesn't care about our family. And that's when I knew. She'd never stop trying to turn him against me. By the time we reached the fellowship hall for Sunday lunch, I could already feel it. The cold shoulders, the slow glances, the too tight smiles from cousins who'd hugged me just weeks ago. Something had shifted, and I didn't even need to guess what it was. Loretta had done what she always did. When she couldn't get her way, she twisted the story. We sat at a long folding table covered in a faded gingham cloth, surrounded by baked mac and cheese, sweet tea, and a wall of silence. Ryan kept refilling Caleb's plate with tiny bites of chicken tenders, clearly trying to stay neutral. But I saw it. Uncle Dave didn't ask me how work was going. Cousin Janie didn't offer her usual leftover cobbler. And when I asked Aunt Sherry how her knee surgery went, she just nodded and turned away. I stirred my tea and swallowed hard. They'd all heard something, and I was the villain. After lunch, out in the church parking lot, it all came to a head. Ryan was buckling Caleb into his booster seat when Loretta appeared beside me, like a shadow that wouldn't move. You know, Jenna, she said, voice soft but sharp. I just don't understand why you're making things so difficult. Difficult? I kept my eyes on the back seat, brushing crumbs off Caleb's shirt. You act like protecting what's yours is more important than helping your husband build something real. I turned slowly. Are you implying I'm not helping him? I'm just saying, she sighed, glancing around to make sure other relatives were in earshot. Ryan could have expanded the business years ago if he'd had the right support. Ah. There it was. The smear campaign, served Southern style. Polite, public, and poisonous. By the time we drove off, Ryan's jaw was clenched tight. "Did you hear her?" I asked. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I heard. She's planting seeds, trying to make them think I'm selfish, that I'm holding you back." He didn't respond. The silence was louder than her gossip. But the real hit came 2 days later. I was walking Caleb to the playground when I overheard it. Two moms talking near the benches. "All that money, and she still parks in the car line like the rest of us. Must be nice having rentals and a husband who defends her while she tightens the leash." They didn't even bother to lower their voices. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I just walked Caleb to the slide, pushed him gently, and smiled like the world wasn't spinning sideways beneath my feet, because I wasn't going to let Loretta win by unraveling me. Not this time. That night, I sat on the edge of our bed, laptop open, flipping through our monthly budgets and maintenance logs for the condos. Ryan came in, dropped his phone on the dresser. "I talked to Mom," he said. I didn't look up. "And?" "She said I've changed, that you've turned me against them, that you don't care about the family." "And what did you say?" He paused, long enough to make my chest ache. Then, "I told her to stop." I looked up. "I told her we're not doing this anymore," he continued. "No more guilt trips, no more passive digs, no more backhanded comments about you at church." "You really said that?" He nodded. "She didn't take it well, but I'm done playing middleman. If they're choosing sides, then I'm on yours." The weight that left my chest nearly brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. He reached out, took my hand. I should have done it sooner. That Sunday, we didn't go to lunch with the family. We took Caleb to the zoo instead, watched him laugh at the monkeys, and hold a juice box with both hands like it was gold. And when he turned around and said, "This is fun?" Ryan looked at me and smiled. "This is family." They could say what they wanted, whisper all they liked. But Ryan had drawn the line, and so had I. Chahabend. Ryan stood in front of his family, his mother, his uncles, the cousins all watching, and said the words I never thought I'd hear. "We're done with the guilt trips. Jenna's my wife, and I'm proud of her." The first warning came through my phone at 6:14 a.m. Winter storm. Warning. Heavy snow and ice expected. Travel discouraged. I stared at it, half awake, wrapped in the quilt my grandma had made me. Ryan was still snoring, Caleb's dinosaur nightlight blinking faintly down the hall. I had planned to spend the weekend grading papers and baking banana bread. Instead, the universe sent sleet, cracked plumbing, and a test I didn't see coming. By Saturday afternoon, one of the tenants from the Asheville condo called. "Ms. Carter, I'm so sorry to bother you, but there's water pouring out from under the sink. I think a pipe burst." My stomach dropped. We'd winterized, I thought. The heat was on low, the cabinets left cracked open. But still, things crack under pressure, especially when the storm outside matches the one you've been carrying inside for months. By Sunday, it was worse. 2 pipes had burst. The downstairs unit had water damage, and the ceiling had started to leak, slow at first, then fast. Ryan and I drove up to Asheville through slush and fog, towing Caleb with us, bundled in layers and clinging to his tablet. When we walked in, the smell of damp drywall hit us like a punch. And then the silence. That eerie kind of quiet that only comes when something's wrong and expensive. I stood in the middle of the living room, water soaking through my boots, and for a moment, I wanted to scream. We could dip into the trust, Ryan said quietly. I turned to look at him. That's Caleb's future. It's our now. We didn't raise our voices, didn't blame each other, just stared at the water pooling under the crown molding that Grandma Ella had once picked out herself. We called the contractor, then a second one, then a third, who could maybe come out next week, weather permitting. Everything was behind. Everything was pricey. Everything felt heavy. Chapter 8. That night, we checked into a motel nearby, Caleb tucked between us in a queen-sized bed that smelled like cleaning fluid and off-brand air freshener. Ryan rubbed his temples. You okay? I nodded, but I wasn't. We planned everything, I whispered. We did it all right, and still, this... Hey, he said, grabbing my hand. We'll get through it. Without touching the trust? Without touching the trust. Monday morning, a text came through from Loretta. Heard about the storm. Want me to call my guy? He's fast and good. Just let me take a look at the unit, see what's really needed. I stared at the message like it had teeth. Of course she heard. She always did. And of course she had a guy. And of course she wanted in. Ryan saw me freeze and took the phone from my hand. Don't answer her, he said. But I already knew what was coming. That afternoon, a contractor showed up. Except, I hadn't called him. He knocked twice and introduced himself as Earl, Loretta's friend. Said y'all needed help and might be too proud to ask. My jaw tightened. We're good, I said flatly. Thanks, but no thanks. She said to tell you this isn't charity. It's family. Said you'd know what that meant. Oh, I knew. It meant strings, cameras, keys left under mats she'd memorize, financial traps dressed up as kindness. I closed the door in silence. Ryan just watched me, then wrapped an arm around my shoulder. She's circling again. And she's using the storm. That night, as I rechecked the contractor bids on my laptop and added up the rising cost, Caleb crawled into my lap. Mama, are we gonna live here now? No, baby, I whispered. Just for a few more sleeps. It smells funny. Yeah, it does. Is Grandma Loretta gonna come here? I froze. Why would you ask that? She said maybe she'd visit. Said you might need help. I gently pulled him back, looking into his sweet, unknowing eyes. She said that to you? He nodded. At church. That was it. My storm wasn't the burst pipe. It wasn't the leaking ceiling. It wasn't even the mold we'd likely need to cut out next week. It was her, always her, using whispers and timing and little ears to find her way back in. But this time, I wouldn't let the crack become a flood. That night, I picked up my phone, stared at her text, and typed, If you want to help Loretta, send a check. No visits, no walkthroughs, no favors. I hit send, and I waited. Her reply came 3 minutes later. Fine, but I want a key. There's something about a wide open lot, just grass, breeze, and silence, that makes your whole soul exhale. Ryan and I stood hand in hand on a slight hill overlooking a green patch of Carolina countryside. The land rolled gently, kissed by spring. No neighbors. No noise, no Loretta, just possibility. You can hear the quiet, I whispered. And feel the peace, he added. Caleb was off in the distance, chasing butterflies and pretending sticks were dragons. I watched him and felt something strange tug in my chest, something I hadn't felt in a long while. Hope. We weren't ready to build tomorrow, but the idea was real. Tangible. Sell one condo. Buy this land. Build a simple family home. Nothing flashy. Nothing fancy. Just ours. We could have chickens, Ryan joked. You're not touching a chicken. We could name them after your mother's favorite soap opera characters. Now you're really not touching a chicken. We laughed. The kind of laughter you forget how much you miss until it finds you again. That evening, we sat at our kitchen table, sketching dream floor plans on napkins. Ryan Googled tiny porches and wide hallways. I imagined flower beds and stained glass panels in the front door. We weren't rich, but we had options. You sure you want to sell Unit 2? Ryan asked gently. It's time, I said. That apartment's paid for. The rent's steady, but this could be a home. She'll hear about it. She always does. We should have knocked on wood, because 2 days later, Loretta heard. And of course, she didn't just hear, she reacted. Ryan got the first call. Hi, sweetheart. Just checking in. I heard y'all were looking at property. Thought I'd swing by something I found. I have a friend in real estate, remember? He didn't answer fast enough, and she took the pause as permission. That Saturday, we drove back out to the lot. Except this time, Loretta's Lexus was already parked there, and beside it, a tall woman with a sleek bob haircut, a clipboard, and kitten heels, on grass. Darla, she chirped, extending a hand. Loretta said you might need some vision. Excuse me? This property is good bones but needs intention. I brought some drafts, potential layouts, open concept, gourmet kitchen, dual entry foyer, great for guests. I blinked. So did Ryan. We're not building a wedding venue, I said. You should consider it, Loretta smiled. Resale value, family gatherings. We could all pitch in. We're not asking for money. No, she said quickly. This is just guidance. I care. That's all. Her voice was sugary, but I could feel the vinegar underneath. Caleb tugged at my hand. Mommy, why is Grandma drawing on our dirt? I looked down. Loretta had brought little orange flags. She was placing them along the edge of the lot, like she owned it, like she was planning it. This could be the garden, she said, smiling too wide. Loretta, Ryan said, stepping forward. We haven't decided anything yet. But you're thinking about it. So I thought I'd help. This is not your decision. She blinked at him. Hurt flickered behind her eyes, but only for a second. Everything I do is for this family, she said softly. I'm just trying to make it beautiful for you. Beautiful comes with boundaries, I said. And I didn't ask for your blueprint. We left. Silently. The flags fluttered behind us like little orange warnings. That night, Ryan and I sat in our living room, the napkin sketches between us like ghost blueprints of a dream now tainted. Do we stop? I asked. Or do we build anyway? He replied. I didn't answer. Because deep down, I didn't want to stop, but I didn't want to fight again either. Later that night, I opened my email and found a surprise. An attached PDF. Subject line, just playing around. It was a full design draft, estimated costs, fixtures, finishes, even a furniture layout. Loretta hadn't just brought a friend. She'd drawn a castle and was trying to put our names on the gate. And that's when I realized she didn't want us to build a house. She wanted to build herself into it. I closed the email, looked at Ryan, and said, She brought flags, blueprints, and a contractor. This isn't help. It's invasion. He replied, then it's time we draw our own lines. There are moments when a woman draws a line and knows she's never stepping back over it. That morning, I brewed my coffee stronger than usual. Not because I needed caffeine, I needed clarity, resolve. The subject line in Loretta's email still sat in my inbox like a dare. Just playing around. It wasn't play. It was intrusion. It was control wrapped in fake warmth. It was enough. Ryan came out of the bedroom rubbing his eyes. You barely slept, he said. No, I replied, sipping my coffee. Because I was thinking about where to draw the line. He looked at me carefully. And? I'm not building a house with a blueprint I didn't design. And I'm not letting your mother plant flags in our future. He nodded slowly, not defensive, not conflicted, just listening. I agree. Just like that. No argument, no guilt trip, no, she means well, only solidarity. And it almost broke me. Later that day, we called Loretta together, put her on speaker. Well, good morning, lovebirds. I've got the fabric swatches ready if you— We're not going forward with your plan, I said. Silence. Then the smile in her voice vanished. I don't follow. We appreciate the time you put in, Ryan said gently. But this house, if we build one, it's going to be ours. Just ours. So what you're saying is, you don't want my help. We're saying we don't need it, I answered. We're building boundaries before we build walls. Another pause. Then a short, clipped reply. Noted. Click. She hung up. I exhaled so hard my ribs ached. Ryan reached across the table, took my hand, and gave it a squeeze. That was the right call. Even if she makes us pay for it? Let her try. You're not alone in this. There it was again. That word. Alone. I hadn't realized how much I'd been bracing for solo battle. But this was different. This was us. The rest of the week passed in rare peace. We read bedtime stories to Caleb. Ryan made pancakes Saturday morning with actual blueberries, not just syrup. For a brief moment, it felt like the air in our home had cleared. Then came the voicemail. I was folding Caleb's pajamas when my phone buzzed. Voicemail transcription preview lit up on the screen. Hello, this is Maria from the preschool. Just wanted to confirm we received a request from your mother-in-law, Loretta Stevens, to review Caleb's progress and observe him in class this week. My stomach dropped. I played it again, twice, just to make sure I hadn't misunderstood. She hadn't just crossed the line. She bulldozed through it and built a deck. What? I walked into the living room, phone still in hand. Ryan looked up from his laptop. What's wrong? She went around us. What do you mean? I hit play. We both listened. The friendly, polite tone of the school director made it worse. Like this was routine. Like it was normal. It wasn't. She's pushing into Caleb's world now, I said, my voice tight. This isn't about houses or money anymore. This is about control. Ryan stood up. I'll handle it. No, I said. We'll handle it, but it's going to be on our terms. We drove straight to the school the next morning. Maria, the director, greeted us with her usual cheerful smile until she saw our faces. I'm so sorry. I assumed she had your permission. She filled out a grandparent access form. We didn't authorize that, I said calmly, and we need to revoke anything she's submitted. Of course. I'll flag the file and update our system. And moving forward, Ryan added, any request from anyone not on the emergency contact list, we want a phone call first. Maria nodded. Absolutely. I understand. We left the school parking lot without saying much, but inside me, something had shifted. The war wasn't over, but this battle? It was ours to win. That night, I sat on the couch, phone in hand, typing a message I'd drafted in my head a dozen times before. But this time, I sent it. To Loretta. Caleb is not your bargaining chip. You are not allowed to request access to his school records or attend his classes without our consent. This is not up for discussion. She replied within 5 minutes. I'm just trying to stay involved. You keep shutting me out. I didn't respond. Some silences say everything. Later that night, Ryan put Caleb to bed and joined me on the porch. We sat side by side, watching the sky turn to deep blue. I don't know where this ends, I whispered. Hopefully, in a house we chose, on land we love, with people who respect the walls we build. And inside those walls, peace. The next morning, my phone rang again. This time, it was Loretta. Just 3 words on the voicemail. You'll regret this. The call came right as I was leaving Caleb's preschool. A number I didn't recognize flashed on my screen, but something in my chest told me to answer. Is this Jenna Stevens? Yes? This is Nurse Cameron from St. Thomas ER. Your mother-in-law, Loretta Stevens, listed you as her emergency contact. She collapsed earlier today. Blood pressure spiked. We've stabilized her, but she's asking for you. I stood there on the sidewalk, keys in one hand, preschool paperwork in the other. The world slowed, not because I loved her, but because despite everything, the documents, the manipulation, the whispered betrayals, she still called me, not her husband, not a daughter, not a friend, me. At the hospital, the waiting room smelled like antiseptic and microwaved coffee. I clutched my bag, eyes scanning every movement behind the double doors. Ryan was at a work conference 3 hours away, unreachable until evening. So I sat alone, waiting for a woman who'd nearly destroyed my peace. Nurse Cameron came out with a gentle smile. She's stable. Blood pressure's coming down. She's asking for you. I followed her through the maze of beige hallways until we reached a small private room. The blinds were half drawn. Machines beeped in steady rhythm. Loretta looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. Her makeup was gone, lips pale, hair slightly matted. She turned when she heard the door open, and for the first time in our years of battles, she didn't smirk or correct my posture. She just said one thing. You came. I nodded. They called me. You listed me. Didn't know who else to put. Her voice was raspy, not sarcastic, not sharp, just tired. I stepped inside but didn't move closer. Ryan's in Charlotte. He'll be back tonight. I figured. A silence stretched between us, not the loaded kind, just empty. Then she looked at me, really looked. You always show up, even when you shouldn't have to. I didn't know what to say to that, so I sat, not beside her, but close enough. She closed her eyes, exhaled, then whispered, I thought controlling everything would keep the family close. I thought if I gave enough, or pushed enough, things wouldn't fall apart. A pause. But I just made you run further. I blinked, unsure if this was real or some fever-induced confession. Loretta, I'm not here for apologies, I said softly. I'm here because I would want someone to show up for me if I were alone in a hospital bed. She turned toward me again, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't have anyone else. But you. That hit harder than I expected. Not because it changed anything, but because it revealed everything. She wasn't just angry all those years. She was scared. Scared of being irrelevant, of being left behind, of not being the center of a family she'd built with iron fists and expectations. I didn't forgive her then, but something inside me softened, because control, I realized, had been her armor. And now, lying in a thin hospital gown under flickering fluorescent lights, she had nothing left to shield her. I stayed for an hour. She drifted in and out of sleep. Once, she reached for my hand, and I let her hold it. Not because she earned it, but because I needed to remember who I was. Not spiteful, not bitter, but strong enough to hold boundaries and compassion. Before I left, I spoke quietly by the bed. "You'll be okay. The doctors are good here." She nodded, eyelids heavy. "Jenna, tell Ryan I'm sorry." "You can tell him yourself." I turned to go. "Thank you," she said, almost too quiet to hear. Driving home, I pulled into the daycare parking lot to pick up Caleb. He ran into my arms, backpack bouncing. His tiny voice grounded me. "Mama, guess what? I helped Tyler clean up without being asked." I smiled, heart full. That's my boy. As I buckled him into his seat, I thought back to Loretta's words. "I don't have anyone else, but you." And I realized something. You can win a war without burning down the village. You can protect your peace and still extend a hand to someone drowning in their own consequences. But you never, ever lower your guard. That evening, Ryan came home and sat down beside me. "I talked to the hospital," he said. "They said you stayed with her. You didn't have to." "I know," I replied. "But I needed to see her without the performance, without the mask." He nodded slowly. Then he reached into his pocket and handed me something. A letter. From Loretta. Sealed. Addressed in shaky handwriting. "She asked me to give this to you." Loretta's letter sat on the kitchen counter for 2 days before I opened it. Not because I was angry, but because part of me didn't know if I could handle whatever she'd written. Another manipulation, another guilt trip, or worse, some final, pathetic attempt to rewrite our story. But when I finally peeled the envelope open, the handwriting inside was shaky, wavering, like her. "Jenna, if I go into surgery and don't come out, I don't want that to be the end of our story. I've pushed too hard, and I see that now. I mistook silence for secrecy. I mistook boundaries for betrayal. And I forgot that protecting family sometimes means letting go. Do what you think is right. If that means walking away from me forever, I understand. But thank you for showing up when no one else did." No demand, no ask, just surrender. The next day, I walked into the hospital carrying a manila envelope and my checkbook. Loretta was awake, hooked up to machines, tubes in her arm, eyes puffy from sleep, or maybe crying. She tried to sit up when she saw me. Failed. Then gave up trying. "You read it?" she asked, voice brittle. I did. Silence stretched between us. "And?" "I'm not here to talk," I said. "I'm here to cover the part your insurance won't." She blinked, confused. "You... what?" I pulled the chair close and set the manila envelope down on her bedside table. "The surgery. The out-of-pocket portion. The nurse said it's $32,000. I'm covering it." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Why would you... after everything I've..." "Because my son will one day ask what happened to his grandmother, and I want to be able to say I did the right thing." Loretta's mouth opened, then shut. Her eyes filled, brimmed over, and then the dam broke. She sobbed. Not a delicate, tissue-pat kind of cry, but the deep, guttural sound of someone finally collapsing under the weight of years of control. "I was so wrong about you," she whispered between gasps. I thought if I didn't hold everything together, it would all fall apart. And then you came in, quiet, careful, strong, and God, I tried to break you." I didn't cry, but I didn't harden either, because in that moment, something shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but release. The anger drained from me like rain down a gutter, not because she deserved it, but because I did. I didn't want to carry her mistakes anymore. "There's no contract," I said quietly. No strings. I don't want anything in return. This isn't about you. It's about who I choose to be." She nodded, still trembling. "You don't have to let me back in," she said. "But I hope someday you'll let Caleb know I tried to change." "That's not up to me," I replied. "It's up to your actions from here on." She reached for my hand, and I let her. It wasn't a power play anymore. It was just a sick woman asking for human grace. A few minutes later, the nurse stepped in with a clipboard. I signed the billing authorization. Wrote the check without hesitation. "Are you sure?" the nurse asked, glancing between me and Loretta. "Yes," I said, looking straight ahead. "We take care of our own." On my way out, I passed Ryan in the hallway. He grabbed my hand, squeezed it tight. "She told me what you did." "She needed help," I said. "You didn't have to be the one to give it." I paused. Exactly why I had to. That night, I sat on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the pine trees. Caleb was asleep. Ryan was inside, cooking pasta. And for the first time in months, I felt light. Not because anything had been erased, but because something sacred had been restored. My peace. The next morning, I visited the hospital again before work. Loretta was sitting up, a little color back in her face, flipping through an old magazine. She looked up, smiled. "You came back." I didn't smile, but I nodded. She reached toward the tray table and pushed a folded note toward me. "I want you to have this." I opened it. A single sentence. "Thank you, daughter." I don't know if I'll ever call her mom. But in that moment, something changed. Not because she was family by blood or marriage, but because Grace had made space for something new, something earned, something honest. Chapter. That weekend, Ryan invited both sides of the family for a backyard dinner. Loretta showed up, quiet, humble, different. And when the toast came around, she stood, glass in hand, and said something that made everyone go still. I used to think protecting the family meant controlling it, but Jenna showed me real protection looks a lot more like trust. The backyard smelled like jasmine and charcoal. Ryan had insisted we host both sides of the family, something about new beginnings and long tables. And though I'd fought the idea at first, the truth was, I was ready. Not for reconciliation, but maybe for release. The grill sizzled. Caleb ran barefoot through the grass, squealing with his cousins. And Loretta? She was sitting beside Aunt Cheryl, laughing at something I couldn't hear. But it didn't look fake, didn't look forced, just easy. And that, more than anything, made my chest tighten. Chapter. When dinner was finally served, grilled chicken, slaw, mac and cheese from scratch, Ryan stood up with a beer in one hand and tapped the side of his glass. Before we dig in, I just want to say thank you. Not just for being here, but for hanging with us through the crazy. Family's not easy, and Lord knows we've been through it. There were chuckles, some awkward, some knowing. He reached for my hand. But this woman right here, she's taught me that strength isn't loud. Sometimes it's just doing what's right, even when no one claps for it. People clapped anyway. I smiled politely, heart racing. Then, to my surprise, Loretta stood up, holding her glass with both hands. "Can I say something?" The yard went still. She didn't wait for permission. "I owe a lot of you an apology. But most of all, I owe one to Jenna." She turned to face me, voice steady but soft. "I spent too long believing that family was something you control to protect. But Jenna, you taught me something different. You protected your future, and mine, by standing firm." My throat tightened. "You didn't fold. You didn't lash out. You just kept showing up, with dignity, with grace, and with receipts," she added, to a ripple of nervous laughter. "I didn't see it at first, but now I do. And I'm proud my son married you." A few people murmured, "Amen." I didn't cry, but something inside me let go. The fist that had been clenched for months slowly uncurled, not because I forgot the damage, but because I was finally seeing the change. Later that evening, I was collecting plastic cups and shooing mosquitoes when Loretta stepped beside me. "Need a hand?" she asked. "I'm good," I said, but she was already gathering plates. "I meant to ask," she said, not looking up. "Have y'all picked out flowers for the new house yet?" I blinked. "What?" "The landscaping. I saw your Pinterest board." "You like hydrangeas, right?" Yeah. How'd you—" "Ryan showed me, said y'all were dreaming big." She looked at me then, not with entitlement, but with something else entirely. Hope. "Would it be all right if I came with you to pick some out? I know a place up in Spartanburg that— well, only if you want. I just thought—" Her voice trailed off. She wasn't asking to design or control or decide. She was offering to join. And for once, I didn't feel the need to brace for impact. "Okay," I said. "We can make a morning of it." She smiled, relieved, even. Not triumphant, just thankful. And I realized something. The woman I'd been at war with, she wasn't standing across from me anymore. She was standing beside me. Inside, Caleb was already in pajamas, curled up on Ryan's lap with a juice box. The house smelled like citronella and coconut oil. And my heart, for the first time in a long time, didn't feel like it was walking on glass. That night, as I tucked Caleb in, he asked, "Is Grandma still in trouble?" I paused. "No, baby. She's working on being better. And that takes time." She said, "Sorry," he added sleepily. She did. "Then maybe she can plant flowers with us." I kissed his forehead. "Yeah, maybe she can." In the quiet of the hallway, I looked at the vision board Ryan and I had taped to the fridge months ago. Scrapbook pages of porch swings, wildflowers, and Caleb's hand-drawn dream backyard. We'd planned it before the storm, before the surgeries and the secrets and the silent wars. But now, it didn't feel like a fantasy anymore. It felt earned, and that made it real. The next morning, Loretta texted me a photo of a flower shop upstate. Just 4 words. "Let's go dream together?" And for the first time since the wedding, I didn't feel the need to second-guess her motives. The porch still smelled like fresh paint and sawdust. Our swing hadn't been installed yet, but I was already imagining slow mornings with coffee and quiet evenings watching the sun bleed into the pines. Caleb was in the yard, chasing fireflies with a mason jar and squealing like joy had never left him. The siding on the house gleamed in the fading light. We weren't quite moved in yet, just a few more inspections, a couple more boxes, but the soul of this place, it was already home. Loretta sat beside me in one of the folding chairs we'd brought from the apartment. Her posture was softer now, the tension that once lived in her shoulders nowhere to be found. She passed me a glass of sweet tea. This time, she'd made it just the way I liked. No snide comments, no adjustments, just tea. "You did this," she said after a long silence. I turned to her, eyebrow raised. "We did," I offered, but she shook her head. "No. I fought you. I doubted you. I tried to control what wasn't mine to touch. But you built this. You held the line when I tried to cross it. And somehow, you still made room for me." Her voice trembled. "You changed me." It hit me harder than I expected. Not the words, but the truth in them. The woman who once brought a notary to my doorstep and tried to trick me into signing away my independence was now sitting next to me, asking nothing, just offering gratitude. I looked at Caleb running barefoot through the grass, his hair backlit like a halo. This house didn't just represent square footage or new appliances, it represented the war I'd survived, the one I never asked for but had to win. It was my grandmother's wisdom made real. The hidden keys in the safety box. The hush-hush checks tucked in my drawer. The condos that once felt like a secret burden had been the shield that protected my family from unraveling. Ryan stepped out with a box of takeout and a tired grin. "You two gonna sit there all night, or are you joining us?" Loretta smiled and rose slowly. "We're coming." She reached out, not to grab my arm, not to guide me, but just to brush my shoulder. And then she walked ahead, letting me follow on my own. I lingered a moment longer on the porch, staring out at the land we'd fought for, the peace we'd carved out. I thought about all the things I didn't say, all the lies I never told, but truths I held close until it was safe. I thought about Grandma Ella's voice. "Don't tell a soul until you know who you're dealing with." God, she'd been right. Had I shared too early, I would have signed those deeds away. Had I trusted blindly, I would have lost not just the properties, but my sanity. Chandakam. But I hadn't. I'd held the line, quietly, firmly. And somehow, I hadn't just protected my inheritance. I'd protected myself, my son, even Ryan, in a way. That night, as we sat on the floor of the unfinished living room, eating sesame chicken out of paper boxes, Caleb crawled into my lap and whispered, "Can we stay here forever?" I kissed the top of his head. "That's the plan, baby." After we tucked him in on the blow-up mattress, Ryan pulled me close. "Thank you," he said. "For everything. For fighting. Even when I didn't know we were in a war." I held his gaze. "You chose the right side when it mattered." "Took me long enough," he said, half laughing, half sorry. "We made it," I whispered. Later, I stepped outside once more. The stars in the hill country sky stretched wider than I remembered them from the city. The porch creaked as I sat alone, tea in hand. And I whispered to the night, to my grandmother, to the version of me that once trembled through fake smiles and ambush dinners, "We're okay now. We're really okay." I didn't tell them about the inheritance when I married Ryan. And thank God I didn't. That silence, it saved everything.